Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. This is Dom Hebblethwaite from the Chartered Institute of Linguists, and I'd like to welcome you all once again to COL's Technology for Translators Week, Day 2. After Sara Grizzo's brilliant talk for CIOL yesterday, looking in general at how translators can make best use of technology, a talk which, by the way, if you missed it, will be available to all COL members in the CPD video library. We now move on to the second phase of the week, the product presentations and demos from 3 leading computer-assisted translation CAT tool providers. COL is not endorsing any individual CAT tool. However, we are ensuring that our members are aware of some of the main options for translators on the market, and we are grateful to our sponsors memoQ and Trados for helping us to deliver the Technology for Translators Week as a free event. I'm delighted to welcome Angelika Serfas, Specialist Translation Technology Trainer in Bonn, Germany, who will be delivering a product demo for memoQ. Hello, Angelika. How are you today?
I'm very fine. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Great. Good to hear. Okay, so we're almost ready to begin. What we'd just like to do just before we start, if we may, is just run a couple of very quick and anonymous polls just to understand a little bit more about our audience. So for those of you who are on the talk yesterday, they may know the answer, be familiar with this. The first question, do you use a CAT tool? And this is a CAT tool in general. Please answer yes or no. Thank you very much for getting your votes in. A reminder that these polls are anonymous. We won't share these details. Okay, that's great. We're getting lots of votes in, and I think I'll close it in just 2 seconds. I'll close it now. Okay, so a pretty even split. A few more of you already using CAT tools, 54% and 46% no. Thank you very, very much for voting. And then the second question. If you answered yes, and this is only if you answered yes to the first question, how familiar are you with memoQ? I use memoQ all the time. I've used memoQ from time to time. I have not used memoQ before. And thank you again for getting your votes in. Lots of votes coming in. We'll just hold it open for a few more seconds. And I'm going to close the poll now. And so we can see we have 10% who use memoQ as their tool of choice all the time, 29% from time to time, and 61% who have not used memoQ before. So thank you very much all for voting there. We're ready to get going now. The last thing I just say is in order to run the event smoothly, we have turned everyone's cameras and microphones off. There will be a good period of time for Q&A at the end, which we manage through the chat facility. So please keep your questions coming in through the chat, and we'll try and answer as many as we can. Okay, Angelika, I'm just going to hand over the controls to you, and you can begin the demo.
Thank you. Yes, I get to see that I'm going to use the right monitor here. It should be this one. So hopefully you can see my memoQ up and running.
We certainly can.
Wonderful. Thank you for confirming. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through memoQ, how to get started with it. memoQ is a translation memory tool, and everything that you do in memoQ, you do inside of a project. The project is sort of the frame, and inside of the project are your files that you're translating, your documents, and attached to the project are all the resources that you're using. So the databases where you save your translations, the databases where you save your terminology, other settings that you might use, and we'll just take a look at a few of them so that you have a basic idea of how to get started with memoQ. Now, there are different ways of how to get a project up and running. there is a project from a template. I would recommend to use this after you are familiar with memoQ, because it does have some kind of automation in the background, and that can be a little bit confusing at the beginning. So I would recommend to get started with creating a project without a template. You can do it from here. You can also do it from the ribbon and say, I just want to have a new project. Now the assistant will guide you through. There are several steps. Actually, this is the only one step that you have to fill out. After that, you could click on finish and have the project there, or you can use the other steps to fill up the project and then get started. So first of all, our project needs a name. I'll call it webinar. Then we'll select the language pair that we want to use. And you can see that there is a whole list of languages, language variants, and I've selected the few that I'm always using and put them at the top. We'll come to that later when we talk about the options. So my file is English to begin with. I'll be translating into German, but no fear, you don't need to know German. This is just about how the tool works, not what I'm typing in. The next thing that you can do, you don't have to, but you can, is to add additional information to the sentences that you're going to translate and save to the translation memory. That's a so-called metadata. So you can add information, for example, a project number. You could add a client name. So every sentence that you save to the database would then have this project number or this client name attached. Let's say we're translating for client B, and the subject is education. This is something that you can later on also change or add if you didn't add it now. So as I said, you could now just click finish to get the project set up, or you can go through it step by step. All the other settings, I would just leave them as they are. This is the import. So this is where you put in your documents, where you can import and import with options. Now the difference is if you say import, memoQ decides what is the translatable text. And that's usually everything that you see inside of a document, the pure text. Import with options would allow you to do some fine-tuning. For example, for Word files, you could select that comments also need to be translated. Or in PowerPoint slides, that the notes also need to be translated. Or if you have Excel files, you could select a certain column that contains the source text and another column that after translation contains the target text. So a lot of different settings depending on the file format that you import. Let's use the regular import first. So I have my demo1 document, and it comes in here. And now let's see, it has an import path, which means that's the path where the file comes from. And it has an export path. This is something that memoQ suggests. So this is where memoQ would save the file after translation if you don't specify anything else. So it would be the same folder structure, same file name. It would add an underscore and the target language ID and save it in the same folder as the original file. So it's not going to overwrite the original file. If you want to save it someplace else with a different name, you can always do so, and I'll show you how. Let's go next. That's the list of translation memories that I can use. And as you can see, I already have some translation memories. They have different language pairs. Let's make that a little bit smaller. This a little bit bigger. So one is English US to German, the other just English to German. You can see one of them is in italics and the other two are in regular script. That just means the ones in the regular script have the same language direction as my project, some kind of English to some kind of German. And the one in italics is the opposite language direction, some kind of German to some kind of English. So I can decide which ones I want to use. If none of them is the one I want to use, I can create a new one. It really just needs a name. The languages are set already, and all the other settings, I would just leave them as they are. Here's the reverse lookup, so you can use the translation memory in both directions, in this case, English to German and German to English. Simple context would save a little bit more than just the sentence that I translate to the database, so also the sentence before and after, and it also saves the name of the document where my sentence comes from. So once I have that, I have it activated. You can add as many translation memories as you like. but the one that's marked as working translation memory, that's always the one that you write into when you translate. So let's go to the next step. That would be another database for terminology if you want to have one. Again, if you already have one that you want to add, you can just check the box. It would then jump to the top of the list. If you say, well, I need a new one for this new client, I can take it off again, create a new one, give it a name, and that's it. The languages are already set because I'm doing it inside of a project, so memoQ knows what languages I've chosen. That's it. That's the basic setup that you need. At least the documents and the translation memory, the term base is optional. Then we finish and memoQ jumps inside of the project right away. Inside of the project, we have the so-called project home that shows all the settings that we have inside of the project. So in the area of translation memories, we can see which translation memories we have, and we can still activate or deactivate translation memories here or create new ones. The same goes for the term bases. Again, as many term bases as you like. To close the project, we just click on the X in the project home, and then we have the so-called dashboard that shows all the projects that you have created. To open a project, we double-click the name of the project in the dashboard, and it jumps back inside of the project and shows the project home. Now, the area where your documents are, that's here where you are in the translations. Here's my document. And to open that, either double-click or select it and use the Translate button. So what memoQ does now, and this is what most of the translation memory tools do, it takes the text of the document and splits it up into sentences. We call them segments. Usually a segment is a full sentence, but a segment could also be just half a sentence in a bulleted list. It could be a heading that only consists of 2 or 3 words. So that's why we say segments and not sentences. It lists all the segments we need to translate. Each segment receives a number, a segment number. And then we have an area where we can type in our translation. Depending on the file type, we can also see a preview. So memoQ shows a preview for Office files, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, also HTML files. XML files would be shown in pure text. Where it does not have a preview is, for example, FrameMaker files. So it depends on what file format you have, whether you will see a preview down there or not. On the right-hand side, we have the translation results. So this is where we will see all the information from our databases that we're working with. Let's get started with translation. I'll just type in the first sentence. And you can see that memoQ changes a color here. So this is the status column where it says now, okay, 0% means there was no match from the translation memory. So I have to do a new translation. If it turns from gray, that means I haven't worked on the sentence yet, to orange. Orange means I'm in editing mode. So once I am satisfied with my translation, I can then confirm, either use the button up here, or you can use the confirm, and there's also a shortcut key, which actually is the same as in one of the other translation tools. So it's not too hard to switch between tools usually. So let's use the Control and Enter to confirm. Confirming means that the sentence pair is going to be sent to the translation memory, to the database. Now the color turns to green. We get a check mark, which means this sentence has been saved to the translation memory. It's translator confirmed. Then 2 more things have happened. memoQ goes to the next sentence, so to the next sentence in the document, and tries to find a match, a similar sentence in the translation memory. That's what we see on the right-hand side. It found a similar sentence. It says the similarity is 73%. Now, this is also something to keep in mind if you look at different translation memory tools. All tools have a different way of how they calculate that kind of match value. So in one tool, it's a 73% like here. In another, it's a 75 or 70%. it's not really comparable between tools because they all have secret ways of how they calculate that. But 73% tells us that the sentence we need to translate and the sentence that we have in the translation memory are pretty similar. So probably the translation that we have is something that's useful for the translation of this sentence. That's why memoQ uses that translation and puts it right in as a suggestion in the translation area. Then I need to know, so what's the difference? What do I still need to do? And that's where these windows come in. I have a window for the sentence from the source document. I have a window for the similar sentence from the translation memory. So these two are actually the same as this one here and this one in the translation results. And I have the translation from the translation memory, which is the same as the right-hand side up here. memoQ marks in color, or depending on your setting, also with track changes, what's the difference between the sentence from the document and the sentence from the translation memory. Here it has one word in blue, means this is an additional word. So that means also that my translation suggestion needs to be adjusted. I need to add one more word. And now I have my sentence adjusted. It's now the same as the source sentence, and I can confirm it again and go to the next. The other thing that happened was that another sentence was also filled out, sentence number 4. And that's because sentence number 1 and sentence number 4 are identical. It's a so-called repetition. And for the repetitions, we have a feature that is called auto-propagation. Most tools have that. That means that memoQ will make it easier for you to put the translation text in by automatically filling out these sentences that are identical. Of course, you can still go in here and change something if that's needed. For some target languages, you might have different translations, even if the source sentence is the same. But sometimes you say, well, everything that's the same in the source also needs the same translation in the target. That's the idea behind it. If you feel uncomfortable with that feature and you want to have more control, you can switch it off. This is something that you can do in the translation menu, in the translation settings. Here you find the auto propagation, and then you can just simply switch off the checkbox, and then memoQ will not do that anymore. It would present 100% match if you get to this sentence later on, because it has been saved to the translation memory. The source sentences are the same, so you're not missing out on anything. It's just that it doesn't do any of that automation then. And later on, when you feel more comfortable with the tool, you can switch it back on again. So let's stay with, repetitions are also marked with this green broken line. So it means that this is a sentence that comes up later on repeated again. And if it has been filled out with the auto propagation, it gets this arrow pointing down. So it is something that has been propagated from the top. Let's go back to this sentence here. Second sentence, I'm going to confirm it so that I can go on to the next one. The confirmation button is in the quick access toolbar. Click on confirm. And I get a 70% match. You can also see I have 2 different matches now, so 2 different similar sentences in my translation memory. You can always choose which one you want to take by either double clicking, and then it will be filled out here, or double clicking again, or you can see there's a number 1, number 2, number 3. And if you point your mouse pointer, it says Control and 1 to get the sentence, the translation sentence of this one, or let me go in here and use Control and 2. I can then select the second match from the list and insert it into my translation area, or Control and 1 again and get the first one. So it's up to you if you want to work with the mouse clicking or with the keyboard. Here the windows show me that the sentence from the document and the sentence from the translation memory are almost the same. There's just one place where there is a different word. So it's not a new additional word. It's not blue. It's a same sentence, but different word at the same position. So it's turned red. And that then means I have to change, or I know better where I need to change something. and then I can do the Control and Enter again. So that's the basic thing about going through the sentences in memoQ. You can always go to any sentence that you've translated before and change something. Like if you say, oh, this is not a good translation, I should do something else. You will see that the green confirmed changes back to orange editing mode, and then you can just confirm again. Now I would like to show you a few examples of what else memoQ is doing. So for example, if you have sentences that contain a number, and later on we have a sentence that is pretty similar and also contains a number, but a different number, memoQ would try to adjust the numbers for you. So let me just quickly translate this sentence and confirm it, Control and Enter. And now you will see it inserts a suggestion for translation and already has adjusted the number to what the number needs to be now, corresponding to the source sentence that I have at the moment. I just need to adjust my translation a little bit and can confirm again, Control and Enter. Before I do that, let's take a look at sentences number 7 and 8. You will see that also here in the preview, and something about the preview, it changes with your translation. So here you can see the translated text. Further down, where I haven't translated anything yet, you can see the source text still. So here we can see that there are two sentences that are broken by a line break. And if I want to translate them together, what you do is you place your cursor in the first part of that sentence, use the join button up here, and then memoQ will just take the two text parts together so you can translate them as one. If there was a line break in the document, then you will see this small marker. That's the marker for line breaks or tabs. And this is something to keep in mind because this is something that you need to keep for your translation, because otherwise the structure of your translation would be different, so missing one line break, than the source document, and memoQ would not be able to export the document anymore. So when we translate this, we have to decide where we want to have the line break. If you know it needs to be inside, you can place your cursor where it needs to be and say, I want to copy the next tag sequence, or use the F9 key to just copy that placeholder from one side to the other. If you say, well, no, I don't need it inside of the sentence, you can always just put it at the end or at the beginning. So there will be a line break, but it will not break the sentence itself. Be careful not to miss it or to delete it, because if I now confirm the sentence, I will receive a message, a warning message or error message actually. This red exclamation mark always tells me that there is something missing, and this is really a mistake because this might prevent me from getting my file out of memoQ again. So it tells me this placeholder, the so-called tag, is needed wherever I put it. Well, let's put it in to Control and Enter again. And now the message is gone. Then we come to the next sentence, and here we have something, these tags again, placeholders also. RPR stands for something that where formatting is changed. And it means that this part of the sentence has some kind of formatting, some kind of highlight formatting. So let's translate it. Let's just take this one off. I don't need it. So that's my translation of the sentence. Now I would like to place the formatting. So basically what we have here is a placeholder to start the formatting and a placeholder to end the formatting. You will see those a lot, depending on the file format, more than in PowerPoint, for example, or InDesign, you will see a lot of them. In Word, maybe not that much. So I do it the same thing as with the other placeholder, just copy the next tag where my cursor is. You can also copy and paste from the other side, just regular. Or there's another way of putting in these so-called tags. You place your cursor where you want to have something, then press the Control key, and it gives you a list of the things that you can copy from source to target. This can be tags, this can be numbers, this can be terms from the term base. So lots of things can come up in this list. And you just select it from this list, click on it, or use the keyboard, again, Control key, and select the tag. Now let's see what happens when I confirm this. You can see now in the preview, actually, I do have the formatting of this kind of yellow highlight. If I delete one of these tags, so just forgot to put it in, can happen, and confirm it, Control Enter, you will see that I get another message. This time it's a flash. So it's not a mistake as such. I could still export the file. But the thing is, I've started a formatting and I've never ended it. So all the rest of my file will now be yellow highlight. So be careful with these tags for the formatting. They usually come in pairs and they need to be set around the text part and they need to be closed. So the closing tag needs to be there. Otherwise, you might have some really strange formatting in your file. So let's confirm that again. Something else that can happen is that in one of these segments, you see actually two sentences. That's because behind the dot, there is a space missing. So memoQ didn't realize that the dot was actually the end of a sentence. In this case, we can just place our cursor there and say we want to split. So we split it into two different parts, and now we can translate it as separate sentences. Confirm, Control Enter, and confirm and enter. And now I realize, oh, there's a sentence I haven't confirmed yet. You can always go back, confirm, and then go back with the cursor wherever you want to go back to. Now, the last sentence here in my document shows no match from the translation results list. That's because I haven't translated anything similar yet. But it does show me that there is a word combination that memoQ knows about, because other sentences have this word combination inside already. Now, if you double click that yellow line, a new window will come up. It will show you all the sentences, or sentence pairs actually, so source sentences and target sentences that are in the translation memory that contain this word combination, either as a word combination right like that, or maybe even spaced out inside of the sentences that you have in the translation memory. From here, you can either insert a whole sentence, so the one that you select, you can then insert as a whole into your translation field, or you could just select the part that you want, let's say this one, and say Insert Selected. Now, the default setting for this window is actually the 3-column view, which I personally don't find very helpful because it's the source sentences, and for each source sentence you have that translation sentence down here. I rather like to switch to the source and target view. That's a little bit cleaner to look at and easier to see. So let's select, insert the selected, and do our translation. I'm just going to finish up this document, Control and Enter. And now all my sentences have been confirmed. They're all in the translation memory. And now I'm actually ready to export the document again. You can do that from within the editor, or you can go to the Documents ribbon and say, well, there's an export icon, but there's also an export options. So if you click on the icon itself, it's the same as this one, export in stored path. And you might remember that when we imported the document, I told you about the import path and the export path. So same folder, same file name, just the addition of the language ID at the end of the file name. So if you say export to stored path, that's what memoQ will do. Same folder, same file name, language ID. If you don't want that, you can always say, I want to choose the path, and then decide where you want to save it. You might want to have another folder. And inside, you might want to have the document, and maybe you want to add your initials. So you're free to do whatever you like. And now you can see when I export a document out of memoQ, memoQ will already try to open the finished document in the original application. So Excel files in Excel, PowerPoint in PowerPoint, Word files in Word. You can switch that off if you like. That's in the options again. But sometimes it's nice to see the finished document in the original environment. So that's the whole workflow that you go through every time you create a project. You add your documents, you open the documents, go through them sentence by sentence by sentence, and then in the end, export the document out of the project again. So let's go a little bit more into the details. One thing I haven't shown yet is the terminology. So right now what we have only the sentence pairs that we've saved to the translation memory. And you can always see, up here you see this is a new sentence, this is ein neuer Satz. It has 101% from the translation memory. So it's comparing this sentence with what's in the translation memory. And yes, I know there is nothing like 101%, but memoQ needed something that looked better than 100%, because 100% would just mean the same sentence that I have in the document also appears in the translation memory. The 101% match, that's the so-called context match. And that means it's not only the same sentence, it's also in the same context, meaning for this sentence here, it's the first sentence of the document, and the following sentence here is exactly the same as it was when I saved the first sentence to the translation memory. So you might now and then see these 101% matches, just meaning the sentence you're translating is coming up in the document in the same context, so same previous sentence, same following sentence as it has come up before. Now, going on to terminology, I have a terminology database attached. I would like to add something to the term base. So I'm going to select the word or phrase that I would like to save, either in just one language, or if I already have a translation, I can do it in both languages. And then again, quick access ribbon, that's the ribbon we use mostly for translation. I would go and say quick add term, which sends this selected term pair right away to the terminology database. If I do that, the translation results list now changes. So in addition to the red ones that are sentences from the translation memory, I now also have the blue ones, and that is terminology from the term base. If I select it in the list, you will see that this area down here changes, and it actually shows me the entry from the terminology database. So if there were more languages, I could also see other languages. Term bases can have multiple languages. Translation memories are bilingual only. If I select one of the sentences here, it shows me the metadata. It shows me, so there's a translation memory name down here called webinar. The sentence was saved at this time by this user. It comes originally from this document, and it has been saved with additional information, client B and education. So it's a so-called metadata that you can see to the sentences, or if you select something else, to the terminology. Whenever you come to a sentence or a segment that contains terminology from the term base, you will see that the term in the source text is marked or has this blue background color. So that will always give you a hint that this term already exists in the term base. Now let's say I have a second translation for this term, which I would like to add to the term base. You can do so by selecting it in the translation results list. There's a small pen icon to do some editing. It will come up with a small window. So we have an area for the source language in this case, and also for the target language. For the target language, I would like to add a second word. So just overwriting this one. And then I add it with the blue plus symbol. So now I have two different possible translations. And now I would like to mark the second translation as forbidden. My client asked me not to use it, and I put it into my term base just to make myself aware that I should not use this word. So this is in the usage, and there is the checkbox for forbidden. And that now changes the results list again. Now I can see terminology in blue and in black. In blue, again, the terms that I should use, and in black, the term that I should not use. So let's try, if I want to add this term to my translation, doing the double click thing, I get a small message and say, you're discouraged from using this in your translation because it's a forbidden term. Of course, you can still type it. So it's not absolutely forbidden to use it. But memoQ has recognized that this is marked as a forbidden term, and it will give you some kind of indication on that. Another thing, let's put it in nonetheless to change a few things here. And confirm. I will get a small flash symbol. So now it tells me there is a warning. I can show the warning by doing a double click on that flash symbol, but it's a little bit tricky to hit it. So what I would usually do is I would change the preview area. And if you move your mouse pointer over the upper right-hand side, these buttons come up. I would change it to the review. And now the review pane shows you the messages that you get from the checking feature that memoQ has. So here it says term segment is forbidden as the translation of sentence. And it gives a second message. The translation of the source term sentence is missing from the target. So possibly I should have used the word Satz. So two messages for the same mistake, basically. I can change that. If I change it then and confirm, then this flash symbol will be gone. Or if in this case I really need to use this word, even though it's forbidden, I can also put it to ignored. And that then means the flash symbol stays, but it turns to blue. And blue always tells me that I have looked inside, I've decided I need to use it. It's not a mistake. It's just something that I need to do here. So that's a little bit about the terminology database, how you fill it up from within the editor. Sometimes we might already have terminology lists, and we would like to put them into our term base and import them, so not put them in one by one. And this is something that you can also do inside of the project. You can also do it outside of the project, but inside it's a little bit easier. So we go to Project Home, we go to the term bases. There's the term base that we want to put it in, so we basically just select it. It doesn't have to be activated, it just needs to be selected. So you could also select a different one and then do an import and then later on activate it. But I would like to have it in here as well. Now let me show you what I'm going to import. I have a small Excel file and I have a little bit of information. So first of all, I have German words. And for some of the German words, I have synonyms. So this is what I would do when you have a terminology list. Take the synonyms apart into different columns so that memoQ can recognize that each of these are different words for the same thing. I've marked one thing in red, which is the forbidden term. And that is also, if I mark it in red and then import it into memoQ, memoQ will recognize, red means forbidden, and it will set that checkbox for forbidden terms for me. So I have 3 columns with source terms or German terms, 1 column with the English equivalent. I do have a little bit of other information, like something like a note or comment, whatever you might want to call it. I have a little bit of subject matter information, and this is what I'm going to import. So I select the term base I would like to import to. I'll go to import terminology. I'll get my term base, my term list. And now memoQ comes up with this dialog. First of all, it shows me the list, and it has these, the first line shows these headers of the columns. Now F0, F1 doesn't tell me anything, so I'll have to check this box here. First row contains field names, and then that's when it shows the first row and shows me what the names of the columns are. I basically need to assign which column belongs to what part of the term base. Let's go with the languages first. So the columns that are headed with German, they should be imported as a term, and they should be imported as a German term. So I'll just do that for all three columns, select which language they belong to. Then the English column, again, import as term, but this time as English. There's a column called F6, which doesn't have a heading, doesn't have any content, so I just say do not import. Don't need this. And the other two, the subject matter, that would be one of the other fields, where I actually do have a subject matter field. And the note, again, is also one of the other fields, so that would be a note field. So the memoQ term base is not customizable, like you might see in other translation memory tools. It has a fixed layout, so these are the only fields that we can use when you import something. But very often it's enough to work with. So then we can specify metadata that goes with the terms. If we say, well, this is not only education, it doesn't belong to education only, we can take it off, can specify a different username, and then just import. Then let's take a look inside. We go to Edit. We see the list of terms that have been imported, source language, target language, as set by the drop-down menus. As I said, term bases could be multilingual, so you could have more languages than just these two. Let's go to the one where we imported the caret with the three different and the one forbidden word. So we have the three different words, because they're in three different columns, they come up at three different entries. And in the usage, for the last one, the forbidden term was set. There's also a small field where you can put in example or notes or comments or whatever. Don't be deceived, this small field can hold 10 pages of Word. I've tried it, 10 pages of Word text. So it's quite a lot of information that you can put in. It's just one field per term, but still it's a big field. So after importing, you might also want to do exporting. Of course, you can do that from within the term base, or you can do it if you are in Project Home. In the list of term bases, select the term base, do the export terminology. Doesn't matter where you do it. Whatever you do, if you say export, it comes up with the question, should it be a CSV file? Should it be an Excel file? For those of you who are using a different translation memory tool, maybe SDL Trados, you might use multi-term, and there you can create a file out of memoQ that multi-term can import. And then you can select which of the entries you would like to have. You will see an example of how the file will look like. Let's make that a little bit bigger. So there's a lot of information in there. And here I can decide, well, the entry ID for exporting, I might not need it. I can uncheck it. If I don't have anything in the domain, I don't need that. So you can see the columns are then gone. The client column might be interesting. The project, I don't need it, and so on. So you can select whatever you want to export. The term information, that's all this default settings that memoQ comes with for the terminology, for the matching with terms in your documents. So you can take that off if you don't like it or don't need it in an exported file. And then just export. Just make sure that you know where you're going to. Select the three dots, terminology, webinar term base, Excel file, and export. So it's pretty simple to get things in and out of memoQ. The only thing to be aware of is memoQ does not check whether the terms that are in the term base and the terms you're importing are the same. So if you're importing the same set of terms that already exist in the term base, memoQ will create duplicates. There is a duplicate search, so that you can throw them off again or out again later on, but just be aware that memoQ does not check if terms that you import already exist in the term base. So now that we've seen these settings, these resources, let's close the project for once. So you can work on the translation memory on the term base inside of a project, but you can also use the so-called resource console, this big blue icon up here. That's the area where memoQ lists all the things, all the settings, all the databases that it knows about. So all the translation memories that you've created inside of memoQ, all the term bases that you've created inside of memoQ, imported, whatever. There are quite a lot of other settings that we can't cover all today, but for example, there are plugins to connect to machine translation systems. There are QA settings, so for checking, so creating these flash symbols that you've seen before. There are non-translatable lists for words that should not be translated, so that memoQ can alert you if such a word is missing, and so on. So one thing I would like to talk about next are the live docs. Some of you who've used translation memory tools before, they might be aware of something called an alignment. For those of you who don't, this is when you need to translate something in a translation memory tool and your client kindly gives you previous translations. So the source documents and the translated documents that were previously translated but don't exist inside of a translation memory tool. And the client asks you to reuse those translations. Now, how do we get these translations into our tool? That's the alignment. So we basically take the source language documents, load them into memoQ, then the target language documents, and memoQ will try to connect the sentences of the two documents and create sentence pairs, just like we create sentence pairs when we translate. And then we can put those into the translation memory and use them for translation. So that's the general idea. Only be aware that this is a process, it's an automated process, and memoQ is not clever. It doesn't think, it's not intelligent, it doesn't understand language. It just goes by the structure of the documents. So the first sentence in the German document and the first sentence in the English document will be connected, if they mean the same thing or not. So this is just something to keep in mind. An alignment is purely something mechanical. It has no intelligence usually. So these live docs, that's the container where we actually then create these alignments. So you can create it here, or you can create it inside of your project. And for that, I would actually recommend to do it inside of the project because you can then reuse it a lot easier. So let's go back to the project, double click. And if you create it in this project, you can later on also attach it to other projects. So it's not bound to this project. It's just it exists as a resource in the resource console, and it can be used in any project that has the right language pair. So let's go to the live docs. It has two areas. One is the area where you create the containers, where you put in the documents that you want to align. And the other one would then actually show the aligned documents. So let's create the container first. We create new, and it's called a so-called corpus, but you can call it anything you like. So that's the alignment of my old material. It has something to do with client B. It might not be education, but you can put in whatever you like here. So that's the container. Now, once the container is there, the buttons up here are activated. I can add the alignment pairs, so the actual documents I want to put in. I can add my source documents. So I have an English source document. It could also be 100 documents. It doesn't have to be just one. I can add the target documents, the German one. memoQ would try to match up the names of the documents, and then it would just be one line, source document, target document. If it can't match up the names, because here it's written with capital letters, there with lowercase letters, so memoQ is not sure, we'll have to do that manually. So we just select both of them and say we want to link these two documents. And that's basically it. We just need to tell memoQ which documents belong together and then click OK. And now memoQ takes the documents apart into segments and aligns the segments or connects the segments to create sentence pairs. Down here we can see the name of the source and the target language document. That's the actual alignment. We open that up with a double click. And then we come up in this alignment editor. And of course, you can now go through, you can check if all the sentences have been aligned correctly. If you only have like 1 or 2 documents, that's fine. You can spend the time on doing that. If you have a huge number of documents, then actually this is already valuable for translation. So you can use this already just like a translation memory. Let me show you. I'm going to close this. I'm going to add a new document. So a new document that is similar to the ones that I've used in the alignment. Double click to open it. And already I get suggestions in the translation results list. Although I have not translated anything like that before, and you can see it has a green symbol, not a red one. Red would mean it comes from the translation memory. Green means it comes from the alignment. Down here it says it's an auto link, so it's a green connection between sentences, and the alignment itself is unfinished. Now let me show you what that means. I'll go to sentence number 4. Let's do the preview here again. So sentence number 4, sentence from the document, sentence from, in this case, the alignment. They're absolutely identical. But up here it tells me it's 85%. So it's only similar, it's not the same. That has to do with the fact that this sentence comes out of not a translation memory, but an alignment. And the alignment has not been confirmed, the alignment has not been set to finished. So that's why memoQ then takes off a little bit of the actual similarity of the match rate. From here, I can go back to the alignment with the right mouse click. So I want to show the document. So you can see a new tab comes up here. I still have opened my translation, but I also now have opened my alignment. And let's see, this was the sentence. It's an auto alignment, it is green. So the darker the green, the more memoQ thinks these sentences belong together. So there's no real intelligence behind that. But I'm just going to confirm this one sentence pair. I'm going to create a so-called synchro link that turns the green line into this bluish purplish line. Now let's go back to the document. And yes, this happens sometimes, that it doesn't show up directly. There it comes. You have to click around a little bit. Now it's suddenly not an 85% match, but a 90% match. So by just confirming the sentence, it now doesn't get such a big penalty, as we say, on the match value from the live docs, from the alignment. It also has a blue icon now. It says it's a manual link down here, but still the alignment is unfinished. So let's go back and say the alignment is finished. You could go and confirm all the auto links, so make all the green links blue just in one go, and then say the alignment is finished. Then go back to your document, and now you actually get 100% matches and even 101% matches if it's the same context in the alignment file as in the translation file. So without ever checking the alignment fully or saving it to a translation memory, I can already use it just like a translation memory. And I can always go back if I find there's something amiss, some alignment has not been done correctly. So I can always jump back and forth between the actual translation file and the alignment file. And let's take a look here. You can work on the alignment like editing, deleting tags that are not necessary, adding text if something is missing. You could also say, well, this one actually should connect to that part of the sentence. So I'll have to split it here. It's the same as the splitting and joining that we've seen during translation. Place the cursor, right mouse click and say split. Then select the two sentences that you think need to go together. And in this case, there are two ways of joining them. You could either create a synchro link with a right mouse click that would move them to the same line, but there's also other text in between that needs to stay connected. And in that case, I would prefer a cross link that links text across other text. So it's just a different color. And then we can say, well, this one and that one. So just select the ones by clicking in them so that they have this blue background, right mouse click and say, this is a synchro link. They're on the same line. So of course, you can go through the alignment at any time and just spend a little bit of time to make sure that the connections are right. But you can also just throw them in and use them and see what comes out of it as in the way of matches that you can already use for translation. And that's why it's called live docs. But because these documents are live to be used right away when you translate. So these are the most important things that I wanted to show first. Now let's go a little bit more into details. I have this project, and as you can see, I've imported a new document into this existing project. I can always do so. So what you could do is you could create a project for a client, and whenever you receive files from this client, you just put them into the same project. Or you create new projects for all the different things that you get from a client. It's totally up to you. Then I always get the question, how do I arrange my translation memories? Should I do it by subject matter? Should I do it by client? I would usually do it by client because you might have two different clients that are working in the same field. They might have different terminology that they're using. So you might want to keep it apart a little bit. But there is no question whatsoever that you can also use just one big translation memory and put everything of all your clients in there. Nothing against that. So one more thing I would like to show, if my client now sends me a new file and says, oh, this is something that is pretty similar to something you already translated for me. So could you please give me an estimate of, first of all, how much will it cost? Because you already know some of the stuff. And how long will it take? So then I need to do some kind of calculation. I need to do an analysis. I need to find out how many words are in the document and how much of the document already is in my translation memory. So how much reuse will I have? So let's import a new document. This is my demo 2. It's pretty similar to the one that I've translated before. Everything that I've done in my demo 1 document, you can see here it says T100, so translation 100% finished. 100% of the segments have been confirmed. All of that is in the translation memory. So what I do now is I select the document I want to find out how much reuse will I get from the translation memory and create the statistics. So here you check the box to use the project TMs, which are the translation memories attached to the project. And then just calculate. It will give you a statistic and tell you, okay, so there are no matches. So 5 segments containing 22 words that have no match from the translation memory, so new stuff to translate. Then there are sentences that are in the range between 85 and 94 or 95 and 99. They're 100% matches, 101% matches, and it always lists the number of words for these. So this is what you can use to calculate how much will it cost, because usually when you say new text, I'll calculate with the full word price, but for the so-called fuzzy matches, so things that already are there in part, I calculate with a reduced word price, a match value like 60% of the full word price for anything that's a 75 to 84% match. So it's up to you how you calculate that. But this kind of analysis will help you. And it also tells you how much you already have. So 40% is new, but that means also 60% of what is in this file already exists in the translation memory in one way or the other and can be reused. You can save this analysis by doing an export. So there's an export into CSV or HTML, so show it in a browser, or later on open it up in Excel. If you forget to do so, no problem. There is an area called the overview, and this has a tab for reports, and there the analysis is still there, and from here you can still export it. So even if you run the analysis several times, they will all come up here and you can select the one that is the most useful for you or delete the ones that you don't need. So it's not lost even if you close the statistics dialog without exporting the statistics. So now that I know that a lot of my translation memory is useful for the translation of this new document, I can now run a pre-translation. Of course, I can go into the document and segment by segment by segment, get the matches inserted and work my way through, or I can run a pre-translation and have things put in automatically. So I select the file. You can do it here, or you can open the document. Yeah, let's open the document and do the pre-translation here. So we would go to the preparation menu, to the pre-translate, and there we select, do we want to have the exact matches? So this would be the 100% matches and the 101% matches. The so-called good matches in memoQ is everything that starts from 95%. So 95% and higher would then be inserted automatically. Make sure that the translation memory and maybe even the corpus, so this corpus, this alignment can also be used for pre-translation, is attached by clicking on the link and selecting the translation memories and maybe even also the corpus that you have and say, yes, that's what I want to use, and click OK. And now you can see everything that is marked with this blue color that is inserted by the pre-translation. And then you can, from there on, go through and say, yes, I want to confirm these. And here's a trick. It's really easy to confirm large sections of the document by clicking on the numbers. So that number, then hold the Shift key and click on the last number that you have a selection, press Control Enter, or use the confirm in the quick access toolbar. And now I've confirmed all of these in one go. You can also select the whole document, Control Shift and A, and then Control Enter. So it's pretty easy to put everything in a document right away into a translation memory. Now let's go further down a little bit. I wanted to talk about the good matches. We've set up in the pre-translation that good matches, so from 95 to 99% and higher, should be pre-translated as well. Now, what are these good matches? Good matches are sentences that are the same in the document and in the translation memory when it comes to the characters, to the words. But they might differ in punctuation at the end of the sentence. They might have different numbers. They might have different tags, different formatting. And that makes them then 95 to 99% matches. But the words, the sentences themselves, are the same in the document and in the TM. So they're basically 100% matches when it comes to the text. It's just that memoQ likes to tell you, okay, it's a good match because there are just some small things that need to be adjusted. Now here we can see it's a 99% match. So how do we know what actually is the difference? That's what we see down here with these indicator lamps that come up. Here is one that is for formatting. It's in gray. So that means memoQ was able to adjust it itself. So the sentence in the translation memory is in regular script, but in my text that I translate right now, it has to be all in bold. And here memoQ could apply the bold because it's applied to the whole sentence in the source text, and it can apply it to the whole translation sentence. So nothing for me to do, just check that the formatting is correct. The formatting lamp lights up in gray, memoQ could adjust it itself. The second one, the formatting lamp comes up in yellow. That means I still need to do something. So memoQ recognized that the sentence in the document, here the word new has an underline, but in the translation memory, there's no underline, so no formatting. So that there's a difference in formatting between document and translation memory. And as memoQ is not intelligent and doesn't know which of these words in the translation would be the translated word for new, it cannot place the formatting for me. That's why it comes up with that yellow lamp. So if these things light up in color, then memoQ recognized there's a difference, but it couldn't adjust it itself. If they light up in gray, memoQ has done the adjustment itself. So that means then I would have to go in here and do the formatting. There's some formatting buttons up here. So you can do the underline, or maybe you say, in my language, I need italics. That's fine. Just click on the italics button and format the text. So now we've seen the whole translation workflow. We've seen adding new documents. I'd like to mention just a few more things that might be useful. For example, you might want to mark segments with a comment. There's a small speech bubble to each segment. If you double click it, there comes an extra window. And now you can put in your comment. And then you can categorize it. You can say, well, this is a comment that has some kind of information, some kind of warning. It's an error that I've detected, or some other thing that I just want to add to this segment. And this comment applies to the target, to the source, or to the entire row, meaning both source and target. As soon as I've clicked OK, this comment bubble then turns yellow. If I move my mouse pointer over it, it brings up the comment. I can also do a double click to bring up this window again. But the easiest thing would be to just switch the preview pane again, and now to the comments. And then it would give me the information. So this is the comment on this segment, and it was categorized as some kind of other comment. So every category of comment has a different color. And here's something special about Word files. If you are creating comments, if you're translating a Word file and creating these comments, then by default, they would also be exported to the target language Word file. If you don't want that, we can switch this off, or at the end, you can take off all the comments. That's also possible. You could also say the green comments, yes, they need to go out into the Word file, and the other comments should not. This is something that you set up in the options, and the options hide behind these three small gear wheels. You click on that, and we'll go to the miscellaneous options. There is settings for import and export, and here's the area for the comments. So right now, all comments that you create will be exported to the Word file, and for Word format only. This does not work for Excel or for PowerPoint or InDesign, only for Word. But you could say, well, everything that is information level or other should not be exported back to the Word file. So by categorizing these comments, you can keep some comments for yourself, just inside memoQ, and other comments would go out with the Word file when you export it. As we are in the options already, I'd like to show you a little bit more. There is the Languages tab, and this is what I used to specify the languages that I want to see as the first language selection when I create a new project. So I have Chinese, I have English, French, German. You can select whatever you want. Say, okay, German should be there, and one of the Englishes. So it's up to you. You could also say the last used languages. So if you use different languages a lot, you can say the last used languages, or you select the ones that you really want to see every time. And then there is the Appearance tab, which can also be quite useful. Here you can change the size, the font size of the text in your editor. Usually I think it's set to something like 12 point. I find this, or 10 point even, I find this a little bit small. Let me apply this. So you can see it's a little bit small to see. So I usually go, especially when I do training sessions, put it a little bit up. You can choose the font that is used inside of memoQ to show the text. This has nothing to do with the font when you export the file. It will keep the font that was there in the original. It's just how it shows up in memoQ. Then we have the lookup results, which are all the ones that we see on the right-hand side. Let me just quickly go to a segment so that I can show you. So there we have all the different colors. Let me go back to the options, appearance, lookup results. And now you can see that's the sequence in which the things come up. If I say terminology is the most important, I always want to see the terminology matches first. I can use the line for the term base and just move it up and say this should be the first to appear. Apply. And now you can see the translation results list changes, the terminology comes up first. Or these fragment matches. That's when memoQ tries to put together out of the source text and known parts that it changes. As you can see here, it says, this is a new sentence would be the source text. This is a neuer Satz, because neuer and Satz, these are two things that it already knows from concordance searches or from the terminology database. So it would piece together these things. I don't like these fragment matches, so I usually switch them off. Just take off the checkbox and you won't see them in the list any longer. So you can customize the look and feel of the translation results list as you like. You can also customize the colors. If you don't like the colors, just change them, change the size of the text that you see here. One last thing before we go into the questions, spelling and grammar. So memoQ doesn't have its own spell checker, but it can connect to Word, Microsoft Word, if it's installed on your machine. So you could select the language that you're translating into and then select Microsoft Word as the spell checker, also as the grammar checker. Or if you use the Hunspell dictionaries, you can download them. memoQ will download them for you if you click the link and then select the one that you want to use. It would then show up here on the right-hand side. So you can select if you want to use the Hunspell dictionaries or the Word dictionaries to use spell checking. Grammar checking is only for Microsoft Word. There are no other grammar checkers other than paid for extensions that you can add to memoQ. So I think this is mostly it for the moment. Now I would like to ask Dom if there are any questions that we can answer at this time.
Yes, thank you very much, Angelica. That's absolutely wonderful. Loads of positive feedback coming through in the chat. I have to say there's so many questions coming in that we've got absolutely no chance of answering them all now, but we'll try and answer some, and then maybe we can answer the rest as a follow-up. So,
oh, definitely. I will put them all into a list, into a Word file, and answer them all. So nobody fear that their question will not be answered.
That would be wonderful. Okay, well we'll try and get through some questions. So we have questions with regards to the functionality of the trial version. Looking at the trial version, and does that have the same functionality as the full version, and also how long the trial period lasts?
The trial period is 30 days, as with most pieces of software, and yes, it does have the full functionality of everything that you have when you have a license.
Okay, great. Okay, lots of questions around training and learning there with regards to follow-up training and how that works. I don't know whether that's something you can answer now or we can do as a follow-up.
I think we'll do that as a follow-up. I'll have to check with memoQ how far along they are. They're creating new training material all the time, so I don't want to miss out on anything. So sure. I'll put that into the follow-up.
Sure. Okay, great. Some questions around, and I'm trying to sort of group them into different sections, but around confidentiality and security with the tool, whether there are any concerns there. memoQ is a desktop tool, I believe, so it's not in the cloud.
memoQ itself is not in the cloud, but there is a memoQ server, so you might have clients that provide projects to you on the memoQ server, And
Okay.
basically that would mean then that when you open up memoQ, you might have seen this check out a project from the memoQ server. So there would need
Okay.
to be an internet connection to that memoQ server, and you would download the files to translate. The translation
Hmm.
memory and term base usually would be on the server, and you would work connected to the internet, to the server on these projects. So yes, that is possible, but it's not a cloud-based tool. If you're a freelance translator and have your own license, you have it strictly on your own machine. Nobody else is looking at it. So
Okay.
only if you have the server connection.
Okay. Great. Okay. Um, uh, More questions. Questions around different language variants. Canadian English, US English, or Canadian French, and so forth. Different Spanish variants,
Mhm.
and how that works, and also how that works both within the translation memory and also within the term base.
Okay. You can, yeah, okay, there's a difference. Let me just open the project again. If I take a look at my, whoops, and you can see that memoQ remembers which file was open and where I was with translation. So it will, when I open the project again, it jumps back to that document, to that exact
Hmm.
same segment. And you also might have seen that I never save anything. So memoQ doesn't even have a save button. So memoQ saves everything that you do right away. So, but we were talking about the resources. So let's say I have a translation, I have a project that goes from English, United Kingdom to German, Germany. I could still attach translation memories that are just set up with English to German, or English US to German, Germany, or the other way around. So the language variant doesn't really matter when it comes to translation memories.
Hmm.
When it comes to term bases, you have to be a little bit careful, because if you have a term base that has like German set, but your project has German Germany, then memoQ would automatically create a second German part inside your term base. So you would have two German lists, which can be a little bit confusing. So with the term bases, I would make sure that the term base setup is exactly the same language variants as what your project has. So not to get confused, but with the translation memories, there's really no difficulty.
Okay. And I mean, I think you've sort of answered this through the presentation, but there's a question about the exact definition of translation memory, and is terminology a part of translation memory, or is it distinct? Um, so maybe you could precisely
Yeah,
define
there are
translation memory.
two different, memoQ calls them resources, actually.
Hmm.
So there are two different databases.
Hmm.
So you can
Hmm.
have two different separate databases. And the idea is to have sentences, usually in the translation memory, sentences with their translations, and
Hmm.
terms in the terminology database. Now, it's not really strict what is a term. A term can be one word. A term can be an expression of 3 words. It can be an expression of 15 words, of
Hmm.
almost a whole full sentence. So the term base could have anything in it. But to do the matching, to find translations while you translate and insert them automatically into the translation area, that only works from within the translation memory. So only the sentences would be moved directly into the translation area. The terminology would only be shown and you would have to get it. So that's
Hmm.
the only real difference in working with these two two databases.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. Um, a question around key shortcuts in memoQ, and if they work the same as somebody who's using another cat tool provider, for example, is Control plus J, join the next segment.
Here it's Control and J.
Here it's Control and J as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
and you
wonderful.
can
Okay.
adjust that. So in the options, there
Hmm.
is a list of the keyboard shortcuts, which you can edit. Just takes a few moments to open up. And there you have, for example, in the segment editor where we usually work, so there you would have all the things. You can also save a cheat sheet so that you can print it. So all of these are predefined, but you can change them. There are some features that don't have a shortcut yet, so you can add one. What I
Hmm.
sometimes do is for special characters that I don't have on my keyboard. Let's say I want to create the yen symbol. I usually use Control, Alt, and the Y, so that when I press this, I get that symbol because I don't have it on my keyboard. So you're free to experiment and change these things around.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, questions regarding compatibility with other CAT tools. One of our viewers uses Deja Vu, and they're curious to know if they could import a translation memory, an XML file from Deja Vu into memoQ, and vice versa.
Compatibility is usually for the translation memories through the TMX format, so the translation memory exchange format, which all translation memory tools can read and write. Also, for the translation files themselves, they're usually in the background XLIF. So if the XML format that the user mentions is an XLIF format, yes, then memoQ can import it and also export it again after translation. Same thing with Trados, SDL Trados. So SDL XLIF goes into memoQ, and you will also get it out of memoQ in the end. Term bases, as you've seen, would rather do the Excel file. And there's one new addition for the translation memory. So people who have translation memories in Trados, they can actually import the SDLTM file. They don't even have to export to TMX, to that exchange format, and import here again. They can import the SDLTM file right away.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, thank you. Lots of questions asking to compare memoQ with other CAT tool providers, whether that's Trados, WordFast, all sorts. I don't know if you feel like sort of maybe outlining some differences or reasons for memoQ.
Well, the thing is, the question probably is which is the best tool, and then I'll have to ask, so which is the best car? And I'll have to say it always depends. It always depends on what you would like to do. If you have clients that are only working with another tool, then choosing memoQ over that other tool is not a good choice. If it's your own choice, then I would go with the tool where you feel most comfortable with. And with memoQ, I would say they have an advantage because they came to market when all the other tools were already there. So they have decided to be as compatible as possible to all the other solutions that already existed. So they can import all the bilingual formats that the other tools are creating, be it XLIF-based formats or from WordFast, even the TXML, that proprietary bilingual format that they had. So I would actually take a look at the different tools that you think about and find out which one you feel most comfortable with. memoQ has, in some areas, as I showed, the alignment. I think that is something that the other tools don't have, that you can use the alignment right away without even having to save it to a translation memory. It's also quite powerful when it comes to very complex file formats. Like if you get an Excel file that contains XML, that contains HTML, that contains other placeholders that need to be made into tags by using regular expressions. So it depends on what you do. If you mainly are using Word files, choose the tool that you feel more comfortable with. If you use really complex or bilingual XML files, then memoQ is a good choice. If you already have used Trados for 20 years and you feel fine with it, stay with it. No problem about that. It's a powerful tool. It's really good. The other tools are as well. So I usually feel that memoQ is a little bit easier to learn than some of the others.
Okay, great. Okay, just you were mentioning file types. Did you mention PowerPoint? We've got a question about somebody looking to use PowerPoint with it.
Oh, sure. You can do whatever you like. Let me go to the import with options, and let's see, we have more file formats, PowerPoint.
Wonderful.
So, for example, here's the list of file types that memoQ supports at the moment, and this is being added to all the time. So Adobe, FrameMaker, and InDesign. There are mind maps, so free mind maps. You can have all the Microsoft formats, Excel, PowerPoint. Let's take a look inside the PowerPoint filter, where you can decide whether you want to translate the notes or not, the comments or not, hidden slides, if you want to force memoQ to read the hidden slides or not. So there are quite a lot of settings here. We have a lot of things that you can do with regular expressions. So if you have pure text files that need to be divided into translatable text and text or stuff that is outside of text. You can do so. SRT for video translation, so these subtitling formats. You could even, and this is a nice one, you can take a translation memory, export it to TMX, and put it into memoQ as a translation file and run a check on it, run a
Okay.
terminology check or something. So there's TXML, that's from WordFast. There's XML filters, so lots of things.
Great, great. Okay, wonderful. A question, there's a couple of similar questions around rough metrics for acceptable fuzzy match rates as a percentage of the standard rate.
So when we do the statistics, you mean?
Well, I think in this case, it's looking in terms of,
Or the matches that you get during
I think
translation?
really it's, yeah, in terms
Okay.
of charges, in terms of what people could get paid
Oh,
by
okay.
the word, based on fuzzy matches.
I'm sorry, I
Um,
can't say anything on that because that really depends on the language pair that you're using. It depends on the
uh-huh.
type of documents you're translating.
Yeah,
Very,
yeah.
very often, people go with, let's do the statistics again, go with, and those of you who've been in the translation field for a long time, you might still remember the old Trados workbench. So not Studio, but Trados workbench. And this setup of the match ranges that actually comes from Trados Studio, from Trados
Hmm.
workbench.
Hmm.
So what a lot of people do is they say, well, everything that's a no match and 50 to 74%, that's something I really have to translate from scratch. Even though I might have something from the TM, it might not be that helpful. So that's the full work price.
Hmm.
Everything between the 75 to 84, that's maybe 80% of the word price. Between 85 and 94, it's 60% of the word price. So it's really up to you how you want to handle that. There is no real standard on what you
Hmm.
do.
Hmm.
What I would
Hmm.
recommend is do try to get paid for 100% matches. Don't give them away for free, because 100% only means the sentence in the document exists in the translation memory. It does not mean that the translation is good. It only means the sentence exists.
It's been translated before, yes, yeah,
It's been
but
translated before, so it might
mhm.
be that it's translated in a totally different context, so you have to redo it. Or if I take the example of my language, German, um, the same English sentence could be translated in 3 different ways depending on the gender in German. So there might have to be adjustments to even 100% match, so same sentence in the English document, but in the German, I might have to check every time which gender I
Mhm.
need to use to translate this. So that's the only recommendation I can give to try to get
Sure,
paid for the
sure.
100%
No,
matches, at least
that's
like
fine.
20% of the work price.
Sure. Okay. There's another question which maybe I'll part answer. Somebody's saying why should you reduce your rates for you invest in the technology and then you reduce your rate. I think sometimes the reductions of rates obviously is if you're getting the work from agencies. I know of a number of translators who have their own cat tools and work directly with clients where actually they may have offered their clients a small discount, but the clients don't even understand translation memory. So they find, they might translate a document in half the time by using a cat tool, whatever that may be. So
Yeah, if
um,
you are in the lucky situation that your client doesn't know anything about translation memory tools, don't tell them. Just charge your
keep
line prices or row prices or whatever you have. But it's true that as soon as you want to work with a really large client, most of them already have a translation memory tool or are
yeah,
used to agencies.
yeah,
If you want to work
yeah.
with agencies, definitely they will ask you to use a tool. They will not
Hmm.
give you any
Hmm.
jobs if you don't use a tool and give those
Hmm.
discounts. So it's a real, yeah, it's needs to be discussed between you and the person you work for. But if they
Sure.
don't know, just don't tell them.
Sure, sure. Okay, we're absolutely running out of time, but maybe just a couple more a question around using memoQ with a Mac. Is it possible to do that?
No, no,
No.
only on parallels, so not directly on a Mac.
Right. Okay. So you'd need an additional piece of software to run it
You'd need
on a
Windows
Mac.
running on the Mac, yes.
Right. Okay. Fine. And can the tool be installed on more than one computer?
Yes, the license, the translator license allows you to use it on 2 different computers.
Okay,
So one
okay.
license for both of them.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, well, we have run out of time now. As I say, thank you so much. As somebody's just saying, they use Boot Camp to run memoQ on their Mac, by the way. So there seem to be different options there. So thank you once again so much, Angelica. We've got so much great feedback coming in. It's
Oh,
wonderful
wonderful. Happy about that.
to
Thank you.
see that. We will send the questions all to Angelica as well and memoQ, so there will be a follow-up to answer some of those questions.
Yes, definitely.
Apologies that we didn't get to probably half of the questions we received. Um, just to remind you all once again that the CPD certificate and link to the recording will be emailed within 3 working days. If you are a COL member, you will get this recording as well in your CPD library. I should let the viewers know that memoQ are offering a discount to the viewers who attended this webinar. Details of that will follow in the follow-up email. Finally, we have 2 more sessions on Wednesday and Thursday from MemSource and Trados. You can sign up to those if you like via our website, col.org.uk. So once again, thank you very much, Angelica. That was absolutely brilliant. And thank you to Nadine as well from COL in the background for helping the event run smoothly. And most of all, thank you to all our viewers. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we will close the webinar now. Thanks very much.